effects supervisor on Space 1999, as I'm sure you all know, and model maker Martin Bauer. Right, we'll kick things off, just go straight into talking about Space 1999. So Brian, to begin with, what would have been your priority coming into Space 1999? The first things, you have to build a model team, start sorting out special effects.
The first priority was to try and get Gerry to spend money on the special effects, because he didn't really want to spend very much. And after that, design the Eagle. And I used my experience on 2001, so that the moon base was a homage to 2001 in a way, but different. And the moon bus on 2001, when Doug Trumbull and I were working on it, way back in 64, 65, I decided that it should look nice if we had bits of plastic kit and girdery stuff all over it, but that wasn't, I hadn't designed it or anything like that, it was somebody else's job. So I just mentally sort of made a few notes and then sketched something, and it actually had big round pods on the side, not the octagonal jobs. And then when we got on to Space 1999, I sort of remembered that and thought, oh, I know what I'll do. Go to work and all the other stuff. And that's how it turned out. The big mistake was it wasn't deep enough, it should have been deeper in my opinion, but other than that.
As a model to build, I know Martin, you made one for year 2, didn't you?
Yeah.
The Eagle, was that a complicated thing to do?
It's by nature of the girdle work on it. It automatically makes it complicated, because not just have you got straightforward join one to other like that, you've got cross members, and you've got it joined into 2 different places without being too technical. And you've got sort of this pattern going down like that, and you've got straights in between. And when you make it, or at least the way I did mine, was essentially to silver solder. That's using a smaller than normal solder. It's more like a weld. Silver the basic framework of the 2 end pieces and the long pieces along the top with the sleeving on for where all the joints go, and made it really exactly the same as the 44-inch Eagle, just halving all the measurements. And the nose cone I actually got from Brian, who gave me a casting from the first series model, and I kind of made it in the hope that it might get used, and it did a bit, and that's it really. I think it was just the same, only half the size.
Were the models that you commissioned to be built, I mean initially for the first series obviously, you had them done in various sizes. How did you work out what sizes you would need them in?
Well, we knew that we needed a big one, so that was the 44-inch. And then progressively going down in scale to see how we could get away with using the smallest one, which I think was about 11 inches or something.
We did actually do a 5-inch one to be swallowed by the shuttle.
We did, yeah.
Or a shuttle.
Yeah.
Opens very cunningly.
Yeah, well. So it was just sort of 44, 22, 11, 5.
So that was for sort of the purposes of shooting different shots with them?
To get scale, so some of the landscapes, you didn't want a 44-inch Eagle when it had to go a long way away, so you used 22 or the 11 to get the perspective pushed, because everything was pushed. The stage that we were on was actually an old ballroom, I think, in the old Georgian house. There wasn't much room. So because we were doing multiple exposures, we could afford to shoot part of the shots with a wide angle lens and other parts with a longer focal length, depending on what we needed to do to fiddle it about.
Would it have been possible, I don't know whether you actually did this because you did a lot of work with multiple exposures, but in theory, would it have been possible for you to do sort of forced perspective shots with each of the different sizes of models in one shot together?
I suppose we did sometimes have two models in the shots, but really the fundamental thing was we had to do between 5 and 6 shots a day. We couldn't use motion control, because our motion controls, Dennis Lowe was working on, was somewhat in its infancy, putting it mildly, whereas in America, of course, you had all that big space technology and stepper motors and drivers and everything else that you could just go and pick up for a few bucks. We didn't have any of that really, so I decided the only way we could do it was use 35mm film, which Gerry was against, wanted to use 16, and to multiply expose it so everything was rock steady and sharp, which we tried very hard to do.
One of the techniques that Kubrick used on 2001 was building the models and then taking photographs of them and then just photographing the models or animating the photographs.
We didn't have any choice because the Discovery model was 54 feet long and using 65mm negative with a lens that was like that size, like a huge thing. You had no depth of field. So we had to photograph it wide angle using Polaroid land black and white stock, which was ultra fine grain and used on CIA U-2 flights and things like that. And because it was a really fine grain, you could blow those images up, put them on a sheet of glass and then re-photograph them. But that, that left you never saw any change in perspective, whereas with CGI and later model work, you got that.
Yeah. But there is a sort of an element of that that makes its way into Space 1999, isn't it? Some of the shots of Moon Base Alpha are the moon mountains in the background are flat photographs.
Absolutely, yeah. We didn't have any space, and anyway, I wasn't going to sit there making moon dust, having done it for donkey's years on other projects, when we could photograph it in high resolution and then just have these cutouts that we could put up. Looked good enough, didn't it?
It did, yeah. You also used it for some of the shots like in the Eagle Hanna, where you'd have
had cut out photographs of eagles because we only had a few eagles. We had to make it look like there were 20 or 30 of them. And then blow them to smithereens.
You came in on Space 1999 and they'd already started filming, hadn't they?
Yeah.
You came on in Alpha Child, I believe?
Yeah. I'm not sure if they were shown in the same order as we made them. Essentially, I had been to see 2001 when I was 16 and stayed in the cinema. This was the Casino Cinerama in London, which is the place to see it in 2001.
Yeah.
And immediately went home and built myself a kind of a version of Discovery, which is the great long model that I was talking about with the engines at the back and a nice long thing, like a backbone and then the ball on the front. And I made it for myself. When I eventually saw an advert in the paper which said Thunderbirds man to make new space TV series. So I wrote to Gerry and it came back and said, try Shepperton. And I rang Shepperton up and they said, no, they're at Bray. So I rang Brian and he said, come down and bring some of your photographs and models with you. And I was about 40 miles, living with my parents still then. I was about 40 miles from the studios. And the battlecruiser, as it became known, was so long, I had to actually have an old Jaguar at the time, one of these things they had in Sweeney that they used to drive over cliffs because there were so many of them. Turn the back seat out and put the battlecruiser right the way through the model. And I'm driving, I've come 40 miles, I'm coming towards Bray Studios, and next to it is what is now a hotel, but was then Oakley Court, where Hammer used to make use of. And a guy pulled out right in front of me, and I braked, and the model went into the dashboard. Bits went bing, 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 like this.
He always had trouble with his glue, by the way. Initially.
Yeah. It was before I knew the core about. No, I won't go there. Anyway, Brian looked at the model, and obviously, as someone who's dreamt of working in films, I showed him the book that I have of photographs, which is in there, which I if I'd known what was a spy show, but never mind. Brian said to me, the most amazing thing. He said, "I'd like to shoot some test footage on it." And we got the model out of the car, and further pieces were falling off of it. Because, like I say, it wasn't ever built. But it actually was about 7, 8 years old by that time. And it was shot by you, and I actually never saw, I don't think you actually used any of those shots in the series, but Brian was very interested in it, and he said to me, "Look, we've obviously got other models. When I get a script that requires models, design what you think is the ideal alien ship," which was the Alpha Child ship. And I drove home in a sort of state of elation, and we were still with the battle cruiser in the car at the time, we could put back in. And I phoned Brian up and I said, "Right, I've got these drawings," and I went back to Bray, gave Brian the drawings, and he gave it the okay, said that's fine, great. And I remember driving home and thinking, this is great, and then thinking, did you say I've only got 3 weeks to make 2 of these? And one was 5 feet long, and one was 2.5 feet long. And there were a few nights spent working, actually quite a lot.
The paint was still wet by the time you handed the models over.
He never said any of this at the time. Yeah. Anyway, bought it down, and you also said to me on the phone, and I'll buy that battle cruiser off you as well. And we bought it down, and I think it got used in about 4 episodes, and then it got changed around a bit. And,
I'm going to tell you something about Martin. When Martin showed me his photographs, it was a long time since I'd seen somebody that actually took care in focus and presentation and everything else. And I just knew he was talented lad, and it started from there. But I've had lots of people come up and ask me for jobs, and they produced a matchbox with a couple of plastic kits on it or something, and say, "Yeah, what do you think of that?" And then they showed me a picture, and the front of the model will be out of focus, and the middle will be sharp, and the back. And so you know they didn't stand a hope in hell's chance. But Martin's stuff was always crisp, professional. He's always been like that.
Thank you.
When it came to giving Martin commissions for producing models, how did you go about that, Brian? Did you just say to Martin, I need a ship?
Usually in a state of panic because the script had turned up late, and I had a director who at the time would be saying, "What am I going to get? What am I going to see? What am I going to do?" And so I would give Martin, I think I used to give you scripts, and then we would talk about what the things should roughly look like, and Martin would go away. And in the end, I could trust him to come up with something that would be always photographable, which was a great help to us because we were absolutely up against it with the schedules and everything else.
So Martin, you actually had quite a lot of freedom in terms of
one of the things I was especially grateful to Brian for. Obviously, this is my first venture into films, but to be given the amount of freedom that Brian gave me was fantastic. I've never had that amount of freedom on any film or TV series since. And so I kind of started at the top and went, well, a lot like the film industry's done, it's kind of gone down to CGI. But yeah, essentially I get the script. I think actually you could underline or highlighter like the SFX shots, special effects shots, and it would say, for instance, like a giant spaceship lands on planet, and I go away and build this funny straight thing with 4, I think called the Cetaceus, about that long, also made in the same way as the Alpha Child ship. And it was realised that there were actually 2 ships in this TV series. And so Brian said to me, we need to change the colour of it after we shot it in its silvery green colour. And we shot it on yellow, or you shot it on yellow. And then, I don't know who it was, somebody pointed out that most people still have black and white televisions then. So it was looked like it was shooting at itself. But then...
Not in America though.
Says it all. Yes, not in America. In America they may have seen the difference, but in the end anyway, what they did was they got my battle cruiser, like ripped the front off it and stuck a space station on the front of it, and got a ping pong ball satellite that I'd made when I was about 15 and stuck it on the front and sprayed it yellow and then blew it up. And it looked great.
Best thing for it.
I was actually really pleased to see it go in that, making a contribution to the series.
Well, you got paid for it.
I did indeed, yeah.
Well, quite a lot of your models got blown up, Martin. Is that you know, quite painful when you've
No.
laboured over it for so long?
Well, actually, very few got blown up. We know the tricks, and I'm not going to give too much away, as Brian wants to, but essentially, very few got blown up. In fact, I'm trying to think of one that you did blow up, apart from the one I've just mentioned.
Yeah, some pretty sharp editing goes on.
Yeah.
Explosions are put in and the two things are put together. And
I shot in the ceiling. The thing that was great about the explosions that Brian did was that previously, in fact, in South Thunderbirds, explosions were done looking at the camera straight on, and things would blow up and you see it fall down.
Mm.
Brian put a box in the roof with black velvet all over it, and a hole, and a load of kit bits crammed in a little bag in there with a bit of explosive behind it, and then a photograph of the spaceship in front of it. And as Brian's just said, you get to come to the explosion, you cut to the shot of the ship, bang, and this thing will go 5 times normal speed and spread out in all directions. Like, you know, and it looked like it was weightless, and a piece of airfix girder bridge kit will go flying past the bottom.
always airfix.
It was always the airfix girder bridge kit. But yeah, essentially that's, I'd say, but even if things did get blown up, it doesn't really bother you too much. Sometimes you feel like blowing them up yourself. Some of them were real pigs to do, but most of the time, I'm really pleased to see so much stuff out there. I know a lot of it is replica stuff, but it's nice to hear that people have got models of these things and kept them, because I think I'm right in saying that most of the series before that, they were thrown away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk about Gwent from the Infernal Machine, because Gwent ended up getting thrown across the studio, didn't he?
Gwent.
That's
It's the one with the rolling.
Oh,
with the
cool.
rolling wheels inside.
Giant panjandrum twice over, yeah.
The one that nicked through across the street.
We had problems with that.
Was it because it was essentially unstable that when it was working it wouldn't fly properly?
Well, it was on a pole, wasn't it? You know, and it was okay. It did what we wanted it to do, but it was a bit fiddly, and the mechanisms were.
I was actually given a 5-inch diameter aluminium tube. I think Nicky Boulder had put gearing in it so that the ends went round. And I was basically said, build me a spaceship that size. I built the spaceship. I think it was probably 10 days to 2 weeks to do it. Coming up with the quickest, most unusual design I could. I was told then that an eagle had to help to give me an idea of the scale. I was told that an eagle would go into one of the feet in one of these shots. And then Brian rang me up and said, we also need 1/2 the size for when we see it flying on its own or flying away. And of course I hadn't taken measurements of it. So I went down and had to measure the large one, go home, make another one and bring it down really quickly. And that was also used as well. But yeah, as Brian says, it was...
That's why we gave him the job, because he could do it.
Did you find it a pretty punishing schedule generally? I mean, you made something like 86 models for the series.
Yeah, that's included making the Daria as, I think, there were sections made. There were 86 there were 86 including doing Into Infinity on the day after tomorrow in the middle. If you include those, I did 86 models. There were a few where I did like 6 the same of the coffins, made a load of little orange coffins.
Yeah.
But yeah, 86 models.
We touched briefly on explosions there. There was a problem at the time with explosives though, wasn't there, Brian? Because it was in the middle of all the trouble with the IRA.
Oh,
And,
well,
you had a lot of controls over what you couldn't use, what couldn't have in the studio.
we used to use a particular type of black smoke made by Brock's, and it was a little candle, like a little candle, and you lit the end, or detonated the end, and black smoke came out. But the Ministry of Defence or somebody in the War Office or somebody discovered that if you stuck a proper detonator in the end of the black smoke, it went off like jelly pine. So consequently, they changed the composition of what went in there. So instead of getting black smoke, we got grey smoke, which we didn't like. We wanted black smoke. So there were all sorts of problems like that came up. And also, we used to get all our detonators and stuff. That was never a problem. And then suddenly, we were being checked because those little detonators that we used could be used to trigger a massive explosion. So, but that was part of the thing. You had to go along with that.
Looking back at Space 1999, from the perspective of the whole of your career, things you've done, Martin, you said that you regard that sort of like a pinnacle. What about Alien? Because you both worked on Alien.
Yeah, it wasn't. I don't think I said it was the pinnacle. I think I said it was the point where I was given the most freedom to do it. It wasn't perhaps the pinnacle. Alien, I was on it 14 months. When I first started, Brian was doing the special effects there, and we ended up, as most people know, with the yellow Nostromo. Somehow, I don't know the order of what happened, but Brian had to go and do The Empire Strikes Back. He went to America because he kind of got double booked by 20th Century Fox. And they had this sort of strange thing happen where this guy walked in and nobody said who he was, and he had ginger hair and used the F word a lot. And we thought, who is this? And he liberally punctuated his sentence with, I'm Ridley Scott, and I'm going to shoot the models. A lot of us are looking at each other thinking, oh, just 3 months shooting models. And he went round and we had various models placed. We had an engine room set, which had these hexagonal towers that were about that long. And the set was probably about as long as this table. And that was being used for a shot near the end, which is actually replaced. It's where Ripley's running in, and you see her in the background running in and trying to shut Mother down so that the refinery won't blow up, because she's just discovered that the alien's in the Narcissus. Anyway, the explosion, lost my track. Where was I? Say again. Where was I? I lost my track.
You had the set that was about the size of the length of the table.
Yeah, the I'm trying to think about it. I'm trying to work out. I've lost what I was going to say.
Well, anyway, Ridley Scott.
Was
Right, yeah.
sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. I'm trying to think of the order in which it came by, but essentially the main thing was he walked up to the refinery, which I built on a framework. The carpenter Ron Home, who was the guy who made the shapes that we went and put all the bits on, except he didn't do the towers for the refinery. And when I first got there, I was given by Brian the job of making the towers. And a lot of grumblings from sort of odd looks coming from the carpentry department, especially Ron Home. And then he saw me working with EMA and saw how I was starting up, and there was a platform there and another up, going up and then another platform. And I built the thing virtually with four towers, 3 with quite a lot of spires on, and the last one, which Bill Pearson, my colleague, made, which had loads of towers on it, which he made as a test piece, I believe. And we put it on, the system had been shot, and it was sitting in the corner, and Ridley came in, and he just looked at it, and he went, has anybody got a hammer, chisel, and people thinking, he got a hammer and chisel for? And I can't use the language, unfortunately, but he said, don't ever do a hammer and chisel. He said, I don't like all these probes. And I thought, well, you told us to make it look like a Gothic cathedral with lots of probes on it. He went, no. Bang, like that, and 6, 7 large pieces and lots of kit bits go flying away. And he went round the refinery, essentially knocking everything off it that stuck out like a probe or anything, and said, see that area there? And that would be like a week's work. And he'd say, I want you to put a perspex plate there and just put some fine lines in it. And what we did was we actually ran it across the circular saw, turned the perspex over, thick perspex like this, sheets of thick perspex, ran it across the saw, and by doing that we could actually cut through and make some very interesting patterns and put these plates over it and then just put the few little kit bits in. And I must admit, the final bit, which really made it work very well, was the fact that we'd also made a model of the landing foot for a shot of it coming into land on the planet. The thing crushed down. But part of the leg was a thing like a cotton reel about this big that went like that. And Ridley said, right, I want, what's that? Didn't say it was actually what was needed for the thing it was really meant for. And he said, I want 4 of them on the top there with like domes on the top. And that's what you see in the film. If you look, you'll see the top of it's got like domes on the top. And I have to say, as an industrial thing, it did look more like an industrial refinery.
Well, I have to say that Ridley Scott, being an interior designer and God knows what else, graphic designer, everything, he did usually have a pretty good idea of what he wanted. He did lots of little sketches and things, and of course, the thing you must remember is that we shot Alien at Shepperton Studios, not at Brain, and we got so far behind schedule that they pack-struck most of the sets and then shifted them over to Bray and rebuilt them one by one on the large stage. So that was going on while the model unit was shooting all the other stuff. And so Ridley would come in on occasions and make these comments and then walk off. There'd be chaos going on in the background because everything had changed. But the end result was amazing, I thought.
That was just one thing that just give you an idea of the way this worked. One thing I hadn't done on the refinery was finish putting any detail other than those domes, which at the time were not fixed on it because they were just ready to screw onto the bottom. And Ridley saw a box, and in this box were about 50 TIE fighter hulls from the kit. Anybody who's got the kit of the TIE fighter, Darth Vader's TIE fighter. One bit we couldn't really use, or we didn't think we could use, was this circular top bit. And Ridley came in and he said, right, I want to shoot on this tomorrow. And we're thinking, we shoot on it tomorrow. That may have been a few days, but it was a very short time. And he said, I know what we're doing. He picked up one of these things and he went underneath it, put it there. He said, anybody got a staple gun? And how can we escape this? It's called a Titan tacker. I mean, it'll pin your finger to the thing. And he went along and he went with these Darth Vader things. He went up, click, up, click, all the way around. And we're all going, in the background, there were really some looks in the background. And he just said, right, do the whole of the rest of it like that and just put the domes back. And that's how it was shot.
That was Ridley.
Ron says it was great.
Yeah, he was the director. He knew what he wanted.
We're kind of running out of time, so I'm going to just see if we've got some questions from the audience before we finish. Has anybody got some questions?
Question for Martin. When you were a youngster, didn't you write a letter to TV21?
Yeah.
Saying that you made models and...
Yeah. I did, I've still got it. I've also got a lovely letter from Derek Meddings where I wrote to him asking for a job and he said the studio's closing down. Have you got the comic, by the way?
I have.
Oh dear. No strings, it's called No Strings Attached, isn't it, the letter?
I can't remember.
Well, it has on the top its title. Anyway, that was Alan Fennell, because I was going to work on 20 years later on the Thunderbirds comic.
As a child, I used to try and recreate the special effects of Space 1999 by blowing up airfixed eagles using backgrounds and rip-wraps and things.
When I was a child, there weren't any eagles around because obviously that was many years in the future.
No, I was saying that was what I was doing.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
Losing my eyebrows a number of times as well. I just wondered what you used to make the explosions on Space 1999 to get the flame effects. Was there petrol in there or?
Well, that's for
Well,
John Brown.
We only ever used pretty well proprietary gunpowder from rocks and places like that, which we used in measured amounts wrapped up in plastic with a little detonator inside. The effects of the rockets was actually some form of liquid CFC stuff, so that it vaporized as it came out of the jets. And we didn't actually have rocket-type rockets like we did earlier on Thunderbirds. They were steel tubes with a clay base and gunpowder rammed in at the pressure of about 10 tons to the square inch, so that when you lit it at one end, it only burnt from the one end, it didn't go off as a big bang. We'd had enough of that by the time we got to Space 1999, so it was just liquid freon and stuff like that. All these gases that are supposed to thin out the ozone layer, but it doesn't in actual fact.
Chris?
Martin's contribution to the series is obviously well known, and space models are credited with doing the Eagles and some of the full-size set pieces, but the launch pads and Moonbase Alpha, how much was actually made at the studio by Terry Reid and the team? Was most of that done at Bray?
I didn't do anything at all.
No, we built all that stuff in the studio. Terry Reid and Cyril Forster.
They're quite sizable sets too, because that launch pad for the 44-inch Eagle has to
Yeah.
be 12 feet across.
Yeah,
Big models.
yeah.
Did you have much time to do it?
Hmm?
Did you have much preparation time to do all
We didn't
that?
have time to do anything. It was always a scramble. That was the whole point. We didn't have enough. We had to subcontract stuff. We couldn't possibly have done it all in-house, unless I'd had a huge team, which, you know, they couldn't afford to have anyway. So that's why I farmed it out.
There's also some photographs showing a clappable from the very early tests when you started for November 1973,
Yeah.
and the series wasn't shown until September 75, so that was quite a long time to make it before it was shown.
Quite a long time
It was
too.
quite a long time between starting to shoot and actually showing the series. So did you get time for experimentation a bit at the start, or did you
No, I mean,
hit the ground running?
there were, how many, 24 episodes in the first one or something?
Yeah.
So 24 episodes that take 2 weeks to shoot each one. That's a whole year's shooting. And then there's all the editing and the post-production and stuff like that. So there wasn't much time actually.
And were you generally running in front of the live action or behind the live action as far as the
Oh,
effects were
behind.
concerned?
Always behind it, except for times when we had some shots which we had an effects camera on the main set at Pinewood Studios to do force perspective stuff. Other than that, we were behind always. So, you know, the editors could put stuff together and then see where all the gaps would be, because sometimes in a script you'll get an effect shot, then live action, and then another effect shot. When you actually look at the show, there's too many space shots of an eagle just travelling through space, so that they would cut those down. And that would save us a bit of time.
The whole show ended up being delayed though, with the knock-on effect of actually how complicated it was to make, didn't it? Because it was originally going to air in January '75. And
Well, it was
held
a
up to
very optimistic schedule. I
Yeah.
don't know where they got that schedule from.
Yeah.
But, there were too many things going on for it to be done in that time.
I think there was a question, chap, on the end there.
That gentleman at the front just answering.
Oh, right, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, in the pink shirt.
Thank you. With the high degree of CGI work that seems to be used in films at the moment, is there still a lot of novel making going on? And what have we lost through not having the model? That doesn't work for people like yourselves.
The answers to that, I could say an awful lot, but I haven't got the time. And obviously CGI does profoundly affect the work that I do. I'm not at all convinced by many of the shots that I've seen. I remember watching an episode of Voyager, one of the Star Trek things. Voyager coming into land on a planet. Now, it might have been alright doing a CGI in space, although they did have a 4-foot-long model, I know. But they then started fiddling about with it, and they added CGI, and took virtually the CGI took over. There's a shot of it coming into land, and suddenly the side opens, and 3 legs come out, and they look like cartoon legs. I mean, they just look so out of place on there. But not just that. The main inability seems to be to create proper-looking dust. When an aircraft or a spaceship comes down, there's a lot of dust that does it in a certain way. And instead of this, you kind of, with CGI, you just kind of get a cloudy picture. And it's just not the same at all. I don't know if that answers the question.
Well, I'd like to add a bit to that. The point about CGI is that it's enabled films to be made that would never have been made otherwise. You now have a series of directors, a lot of who've been to American film schools, where they're taught cut, 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 or move the camera as many times as you can move it in one shot to prove the technical feasibility of whatever it is they're shooting in. And my humble opinion is the use of models and CGI together can work really well if it's planned properly in advance. But you have, in the production office now in films, you don't have real producers and things, you have accountants. And they're just absolutely the pits. And at Pinewood at the moment, they're starting to do the Star Wars thing. And because Disney is completely paranoid about everything, anybody that goes onto the stage has to have all the proper accreditation. Then when they walk off the stage, like a stunt arranger is going off the stage on his practice stage where they're doing all the stunts, he's there, the security man comes up, I'll check that, right, there we go. They go off the stage. When the stunt arranger comes back 10 minutes later, he still has to get all the stuff out and show this man that he's just spoken to. And so that's all done because in the past, they've got paranoid about stuff leaking out, and of course they don't want that to happen. But because you have accountants running everything now, and not as much as in the old days when producers and production staff knew what they were doing, what they tend to do is they shoot the stuff, and then at the end of it they go, oh, we can do that all in post-production. That's not a way to do it, I don't think, but there you go.
There are sort of a bit of an element of sort of hope on the horizon kind of thing, because there are some productions are actually still using models or going back to using models.
Yeah.
Duncan Jones, for example, is a director who insists on using models in his special effects. And
so they should.
And they're using models again now on Doctor Who as well, augmenting them with CG. I think we spoke about this at the last event, last Cosford event, Brian. What's your feeling about sort of combining model work with CG to get a better
I think you get a better result.
Yeah.
I really do. And long may it continue to re-emerge, because there has been a period where the effects, the CGI effects, some of the shots, the thing that I mentioned, I think the last time was Aviator, where the camera goes through the pilot's head.
Yeah.
I mean, a human being knows, even if they know nothing about visual effects, anybody knows that if the camera goes through the pilot's dead. But not apparently according to Martin Scorsese.
Those of you who are going to be here again tomorrow will be talking to to Brian in the morning. Martin, I'm going to be here today. But for now, we're running out of time, so we'll have to call it that it for now. Will you please give a big hand for